Welcome to Masters of Product Management, powered by Sequent Learning Networks, a show that provides extraordinary insights for product managers who want to go faster and farther in their product management careers.
Hello, this is JJ Rory, Vice President at Sequent Learning Networks. In our Masters of Product Management podcast, we tap into the experiences of people who work in and around product management to help you learn and grow in your product management career. Folks who work in product management spend most of our time thinking about how to build new products and improve existing products, focused on how our organization alone can develop these great solutions. But it's sometimes prudent to investigate whether there are other options, such as partnering with or acquiring a company that has already solved the problem in a unique way or can add some other value to our product portfolio. Maybe it makes more sense to purchase this solution than to build it from scratch on our own. During mergers and acquisition activities, an organization's product leader plays a significant role, from analyzing possible acquisition targets to the due diligence process to the ultimate integration of product teams and portfolios after the acquisition. The head of product management is a key player on that M&A team. And that's just the buy side. On the sell side, when you're trying to sell your company, that product leader can play an even bigger role. My guest today has a lot of experience in this area, and I'm excited to chat with her. Jodi McDermott is Chief Product Officer at Dude Solutions. She's a product executive with over 20 years of experience in digital technology, analytics, and product management, having built many products from idea to market launch, and has expertise in driving growth and leading successful divestitures. She's worked at both startups and established firms, including SHL, ComScore, USA Today, Visual Sciences, and AddThis. She's also an active member of Next Gen Venture Partners, a board member for Lineup Management Systems, a member of the American University Kogod Business School Information Technology Council, and a director emeritus of the Digital Analytics Association. Jodi, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
You've been involved in several acquisitions over your career. You and I've talked a little bit about it on our own. Share with us, tell us a little bit more about some of those acquisitions and what that was all about and like as you were going through that.
Absolutely. So, when dealing with both acquisitions or carve-outs, divestitures, et cetera, there's two sides that you can be on. You can be on the selling side or on the buying side, and I've had the opportunity to do both. On the sell side, where I've been part of a team selling a business or selling part of a business, I've done two sales where we've done a carve out where we're carving out a business unit and selling it to someone else, and also have been part of a PE owned firm or even a privately owned company and selling out onto the market to change ownership of that company. And then on the buy side, I've been involved in about 8 to 10 different acquisition processes where we've gone out to look at growing a company inorganically, or to solve for a product need in the market where we needed to go find a solution to fill a product gap. So those are some of the areas that I've gotten the opportunity to be involved in. And I can give you an example on both sides of that equation. Several years ago, when I was working at ComScore, I had the opportunity to work with a team that acquired a company overseas. And the company was based in the Netherlands. And it was an opportunity to go and acquire a standalone business unit that was essentially going to help grow our business and expand into a new market, new geography, but really a new space from a product standpoint. And through that acquisition, got to do everything from developing product strategy to rebranding the company, the product, working on internal key messaging about how to integrate that product into ComScore's product portfolio. And then ultimately, we launched that product into the United States and also built a product SKU specifically within that product that we took into Latin America at a slightly lower price point with a different configuration on the product, which was a huge success in replacing a legacy product that was down in the Latin American market. So that was one opportunity of being on that. On the buy side, also, I've had the opportunity of looking at acquisitions where we've gone in and we've done a carve out where we've carved something out of another business that's for sale and work to integrate that in. And that gets a lot more difficult because in many cases, you're having to figure out everything across the business, not just the product piece, but standing up, benefits for those employees coming over and making sure that there's transition services agreements for payroll and bringing the employees across. And of course, how is the product getting get serviced for the clients that are already using it? So a lot of really unique opportunities to do that, especially here at Dude Solutions, or DSI that we say for short. On the selling side, just recently in the last couple of years, I've gone through 2 deal processes where I've been part of a deal team, an executive team that's representing a business. And my role was to represent the product portfolio in selling the company. And that's very similar to, you can kind of laugh about it, but almost like selling a house. If you want to use a very, basic example, you're basically setting it up for sale. You want to make sure it looks good. You want to make sure you fix anything that's been broken and make it really attractive to buyers so that you get the best price for the business. So I've had the opportunity to be on both sides of that equation.
Yeah, which is just an amazing experience, and probably having been on the sell side, selling, your company, probably helps you on the other side of the equation as you're looking through, different assets and different organizations to possibly buy. You probably understand what those founders or owners are going through, right?
You absolutely do, because when you're doing when you go through it yourself and you see how different prospective buyers are evaluating you, it's not just about the product. It's about the health of the business. It's about the business metrics, the financials, the operational efficiency, and whether it's going to be an investment that will pay off in the long run. No one buys a company or a product to go destroy it. You buy it because you want to grow it. And you think you're going to get a return on your investment. And that's the end, the end all be all goal. But I think when you go through it from the sell side or the buy side, there's a clear set of steps that you go through around identification of a prospect or being the one that's being identified, the entire due diligence process, which is product, engineering, legal, finances, people, you name it. It's every aspect of the business. The integration process, and I've been on both the receiving end as well as the one driving that process, and then really getting it to steady state, which is where you want it to be, and you move on so that you can keep growing the business and perhaps go on to the next acquisition or the next transaction.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to dig into a little bit of a few different areas here. So let's start with, if you're leading a product team and you're on the buy side. So in other words, your product team knows there's an opportunity in the market. Maybe it's a problem that hasn't been solved, or that you as an organization haven't been able to solve. And you're going through a kind of a typical build buy partner scenario, right? So should we build it ourselves? Should we buy someone? Should we partner with someone who's already doing it? When you're going through that scenario with your product team, is there a point where you recognize that acquisition may be the right vehicle and the right path for you to take? Or there's some areas that, or times that light bulbs go off and you say, this is actually the best path for us?
There are. So I think there's a couple different ways that you can get to that conclusion. As a product-driven organization, but also one that is private equity owned, we are very acquisitive, if you will. So I like to use it to akin to dating. We're always going on dates. We're always listening to hear, pitches about companies that are, for sale in the marketplace. It's a marketplace. There's constantly companies coming up for sale that are going through deal processes. So sometimes it's opportunistic that you might have something come up for sale. But the way that we normally get there is that if you have an opportunity or a gap in your product. So for example, we had a gap in our product that we wanted to close. And we knew that, okay, you may not find that company for sale out there. Because the first question you got to ask is there anyone that's on the market right now? Just going back to my real estate example as well. Is there anyone on the market that's actually for sale? And is there anyone in the space that is going to have a product that we could actually successfully integrate into our product to solve the problem? So one of the ways that I do that exploratory work with my team is we create what we call landscape maps. And we do some of this for competitive intel as it is. We will map out, it can be a simple visual map of just dropping all the logos of the companies that compete in our space, including our own logo in there, and then looking at the adjacent spaces around where we compete for what our buyer or user may also be using in their ecosystem. That's a natural extension into our product or our product suite. And so we'll use those competitive landscapes or those market landscapes to help us identify acquisition targets or to understand just the competitive nature in general if we have a product need that we need to fill that could become, a competitive disadvantage for us if we don't. And so when you go down that path and you see, okay, we want to solve for X, you can go out and see, well, are there companies in the market that we could go buy that will solve for X? And if there are, that's a great place to have your strategy team take a look at that to go out and see if there's an opportunity there. Sometimes those opportunities are too expensive. And so you choose not to go down that path, even though someone's available for sale. The second is to look at the building process of could we scope something and actually build it ourselves in a way that's going to produce a return on that investment. So, you're going to have to pay developers, product management, user experience and design, all marketing, launching that product into the market has a cost to it. And so if it's something that you can build efficiently and run that on an ROI model, and then get the investment either from your executive leadership team or your board to invest to build the product, that's another opportunity as well. And so we usually go down those two paths to try to figure out a plan. And if there is, something in the market that's for sale, in many cases, it can speed up your time to get that solution into the market faster than you can build it yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I love those examples and especially the landscape map. I think that's a tool that, frankly, anybody listening who is on the acquisition path or not is probably a really valuable tool. I worked at a big financial services firm running data and analytics products for them years ago now. Makes me feel old, how long ago it was. And we were organized in what we called centers of excellence. And data and analytics was one, and loyalty, kind of customer loyalty, payment fraud, and just some big problems to solve, if you will, or market problems that we were solving. And we also had something like that, right, where we were proactively looking for innovative startups and innovative companies to go look for. And for us, we were, again, proactive acquirers, but just the value of understanding the market landscape, that alone was very interesting.
Too. When you start to lay out logos and you look at it on a map and you see who's playing in your ecosystem, I mean, of course, there needs to be a deeper dive behind each one of those, but you can take that visual and then start building it into other competitive tools, whether it be plotting out on a scatter plot where you play and why others might be winning or losing, against you, so that you understand where you're most competitive and where you need to continue to invest and ensure you keep that moat in between yourself and your competition.
Absolutely. Yeah, I use that tool all the time, whether it was talking about an acquisition or not. I used it. I took it around the company with every stakeholder I spoke to. I showed them where we played, right? I mean, it was a great tool. So let's think a little bit more about, okay, so let's skip past, we have one, maybe two, because in my experience, we did have a couple of, again, back to your kind of dating example, a couple of different bachelors or bachelorettes that we were looking at, that we whittled down to finally give the final one the rose, right? So you're in that process. You've got one target or a couple of targets. What's the product leader's role during due diligence, and when you're really trying to figure out if you want to get married or not?
Oh, and the thing to keep in mind is sometimes you're actually the one hoping to get the rose. You're
Yes,
not
that's
always
right.
because it can be a very competitive process. So uh, when I think about my role when we go into an acquisition process, there are several different stages. There's before, there's during, there's after a deal closes, and then there's steady state. And so, that before is when you're dating. So, as an acquisitive company, we're always going on dates. Those are conversations. You're listening to different companies pitch their value proposition. It's also a great way to learn as a product leader. Just in general, you really get exposed to the financial metrics of how a business runs because you're buying a business. You're not just buying a product. And in some cases, yes, there are product deals that can be done, but in many cases, you're buying a business. And so I can't stress enough. And if there is only one thing that your listeners take away from this conversation today is the importance of understanding the metrics of the business and understanding what drives your business, as well as if you bring another business and combine it together, where are the synergies? So, for us, we're a SaaS company. So annual recurring revenue, looking at contribution margin, looking at EBITDA margin, and really understanding what the cross-sell or new client acquisition opportunities are going to be when that deal closes. It's about those metrics, and the product drives all of that. So I wanted to make sure I got that in because I just can't emphasize that enough of learning what drives your business, because it will help make this process much smoother if you're constantly thinking about how you contribute to the business as a product leader. And at the end of the day, it's both the top line and the bottom line. So when you think about the before, it's the dating. It's helping to have discussions across your leadership team when you are looking at acquisitions and helping to come up with, what's the product thesis? What's the product strategy? If we go acquire this business, what would we do with it? And so, when we do hone in on a target or an acquisition opportunity, then it really goes into due diligence. And that, primarily it's product strategy. I usually put pen to paper and it's a written document. All right, what is this? What is the company? What space are they in? What products do they have? And then driving into that, would these be standalone products in addition of our portfolio that we already have today? Would it replace something in the portfolio? Or would it be an ingredient that then becomes part of something else that's already in our portfolio? But really important from that is getting to what business outcomes is it going to drive to? Is it going to drive new client acquisition? So new sales, new clients, new customers. Is it going to drive market expansion or geographic expansion? Is it going to drive cross-sell, right? You all remember the days of, would you like fries with that? You're trying to get that client, not just to upsell to, a bigger size, but adding something on so that you're increasing your share of wallet with that client. Or is it going to increase the average order value across the board for your business or a segment of your business because you're going to bundle this product in with something else and increase your prices? So really understanding that product strategy of, if we go do this deal, what are the business outcomes on your P&L that it's going to drive, right? What value creation does bringing this product into the portfolio do for the overall business? The second really important thing during that process is for product as a leader to stay really close to my engineering leader. Because if the underlying tech stack for what this product is something we can't work with once we get it in the door, or we're going to have to completely re-architect the solution, you might not have a deal. Now, there's a lot of other things to look at in a deal, and I'm leaving legal and tax and all of that other stuff out there. But a product and engineering need to be shoulder to shoulder during this process to really ensure that there's alignment on how will we execute on the product strategy once we bring the product in the door. After a deal closes, which is when it's signed, it's now part of your organization, I like to kick off what's called a learning agenda, which is a series of meetings where you're getting to know the employees, and then you're really digging into understanding the product portfolio even more than you could during due diligence. because there is only so much you really learn in due diligence until you get in and it's yours. And so we really try to work with acquisitions by scheduling those meetings, having collaborative discussions, bringing the employees in along on the journey to help with that. But that's when you're taking your product strategy and you're validating the business outcomes of what your hypothesis was. And then you're starting to drive into making really clear decisions on what you're going to do with bringing this into your portfolio. What are you going to grow? What are you going to sustain or maintain? And what are you going to sunset? And then ultimately, you need to communicate that out and be really clear. As a product leader, I'm ascribed to the fact of you need to be clear in your messaging, whether it's this is a decision memo or this is a point of view memo, or, hey, we still have a timeline that's open right now, and here's the questions that we're going to answer before we get to a decision, but making it clear for everyone involved. And then after that, it's really getting it to steady state. You want the employees to be brought into the culture. You want to bring them into your processes. You want to give them a clear path forward and make sure they understand the mission that they've joined or that you have them on as being part of the integrated organization. Because once you get all of that done, in a lot of cases, you're moving on to the next opportunity.
So thank you. That's just tremendous information. And there's so much that goes into an acquisition, obviously. I've seen mistakes being made in the due diligence, and frankly, hindsight's 2020, but after the fact, acquisitions don't look so rosy. But often the integration process isn't executed as well as possible. Are there common mistakes that you've seen after an acquisition during the integration process? I love your thoughts on the learning agenda and the clarity of communication and that sort of thing. Are there some mistakes that you would say watch out for as you're integrating a company within a company?
Absolutely. I think as I look at for our organization, the playbook we now have of running a playbook, making sure you have a project manager and that you're really descriptive on the steps in that playbook, whether that be making brand decisions and brand name decisions or ensuring that all employees have full alignment into knowing who their manager is and getting them onboarded, et cetera, or the product portfolio. Our playbook is the culmination of experiences from all of the executives and many of even non-executives, and just experiences across our whole business of what others have experienced of either being acquired or being the acquirer. I think having a plan and having a playbook and having a project manager are some of the most critical things that you need to have in an acquisition process, because there are a lot of moving pieces. And to have strong project management, that someone who is empowered to really speak truth and to bring the executive leadership team together on a frequent basis of what's going well, what's not going well, and is looking across every work stream, and those work streams are identified into a plan. Those are the most important pieces. Now, if you double click on that and come down into product, where I've seen plans go awry is where there isn't a plan. To go buy a company or go buy a product or carve out of IP, you name it, you really have to know, what are you planning to do with it? And if you don't have a strong hypothesis, coming back up to what I talked about during the due diligence piece of putting pen to paper and understanding, is that product going to be standalone? Is it going to be an ingredient into another product? And then what are we planning to do? Are we going to plan to go plant new flags and get new clients? Are we going to cross-sell it? Are we just trying to increase average order value? And is the technology stack going to support that strategy? Planning upfront to understand what business outcomes you're trying to drive to and then measuring against that is the most critical piece of the process. So I think having a plan, understanding your business outcomes, and being really clear on what your hypothesis is of how you're going to execute on that.
Great advice. So finally, is there any other advice, any final advice that you would have for product leaders who may be going through an acquisition?
I think the main advice that I would give anyone, and especially for leaders, right? If we're talking to leaders, many leaders have professional aspirations to move to the next level. And how do you go to that next level of not just supporting the product organization, but helping to drive the product organization and drive that function within a company. And if you put your hat on and you remind yourself, your job is to help define where the product will drive business value. Because as a product manager, when you're coming up through the ranks as a product manager, so much of your time is spent talking to users, doing market research, grasping onto a business problem, and then really trying to solve it through product innovation, product development, writing user stories, working with user experience and design, all of those great things. When you're talking about contributing at the executive leadership team table and working on deal teams where at this point, you're working with your CEO, you're working with your CFO, you're working with your board, because somebody is going to expend money out to go buy something, right? So when it comes to that point, your job is really to help define where the product will drive business value. And that business value is going to be increased revenue. It's going to be operational efficiency and ensuring that if you do bring an acquisition in, you didn't just double or triple your costs to be able to support it. And at the end of the day, it's really about understanding the levers that drive the business. So as a product leader, the best advice I can give you is understand the financials of the company, understand where you can impact them. And if you don't understand, go ask. There are partners in all parts of the finance organization who would, I'm sure, love to, share a cup of coffee, and even a virtual one, and help you really understand what it means to drive margins, what it means to understand client acquisition costs and things like that will drive value in the business. And just understand what those metrics are, because at the end of the day, your job is to help increase the value of the business.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I love that last part you mentioned about just going to ask, right? Don't be afraid if you don't know something to go ask some of your peers and coworkers.
It's so very true. I mean,
I know, right?
Because if I talk to some of my peers, sometimes, I'll get, quiet questions around how something works in product or, a process, and they're not so quiet anymore. They'll ask, great questions about, how strategy is developed, or how we do competitive intel, or how we go about thinking about, strategic initiatives and how to go tackle them. And I ask the same questions back. And, and I've had great peers around me who are completely willing to give their time. And I do the same. I give my time back in the same way, because that's the only way that you learn. You have to
Absolutely.
ask questions. You have to dig in.
Absolutely. And I think the further people get in their careers, the more apt they are to either think they know everything, or even if they know they don't know, afraid to ask, right? Afraid to look like they don't know. And so I love that little piece of advice as well. So this has just been such a great discussion. Jodi McDermott, Chief Product Officer at Dude Solutions. Thank you so much for joining me and sharing your experience and your wisdom.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
And thank you for joining us on Masters of Product Management, powered by Sequent Learning Networks. I am JJ Rory, and I look forward to speaking with you on the next episode.
You've been listening to Masters of Product Management, powered by Sequent Learning Networks. If you'd like to take your career to the next level with additional tools, training, coaching, and books, be sure to visit Sequent Learning Networks at sequentlearning.com.